From the beginning, the Metal Gear games have always delivered state-of-the-art audio as part of the gameplay experience. For the audio team at Kojima Productions, the expectations were set very high for Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots. The game was expected to not only match previous efforts, but far exceed them. No one has been putting more pressure on the team than the team itself. There are many different aspects and layers to the audio featured in a video game. It's not just a matter of adding in music, voiceover, and sound effects. Each of these aspects has to be individually created and recorded first, and then seamlessly blended into a surround sound experience that plays out in real time.
It really is a very visceral experience when you have the sound on it. Mr. Kojima worked very closely with Mr. Tojima in a lot of kind of ideas he had for a next generation game. And so you're going to see this with MGS4 that not only is it going to be in 5.1 Dolby surround sound, but that we're doing a lot of different things that people haven't attempted before.
そのプレイステーション3という新しいパワーのあるハード、それに小島プロダクションというのを掛け算すると大変なことになるんですね。でも新しいプラットフォームで最初のゲームなのに、ちょっと自分ではこれ以上のことが考えられないぐらいにですね、すごく複雑な仕様になってます。でブルーレイのストリームというのが走っていて、それからハードディスクの中に何本ものマルチストリームが走っていて、それに加えて、オンメモリのサウンドがなる。でそれらがインタラクティブに、コントロールされていくというのはとても難しくて、でもすごくエキサイティングなサウンドができているんじゃないかなと思います。
実際にゲームをやって必要な音を自分で考えて、作って鳴らしてもらうと。
Rounding out the soundscape is the musical score, used to create ambience, evoke an emotional response, or resonate a particular moment in the game.
Being a film composer, mostly I'm used to watching the picture and getting my inspiration from there. But without the images at this stage, I had to depend a lot on what Hideo Kojima told me about what he wanted from me. So I think we have a strong theme. He told me that Snake is on his last legs. He's getting a little old now, so I wanted a kind of deliberate, firm theme. Acoustic guitar was his idea.
There's something a little innocent, but also macho.
小島秀夫はその映画の世界にも、それから音響の世界にもすごく関心が高いのでですね、これまでもハリウッドとかいろんな方のお力借りてきたんですけども、その中でもスカイウォーカーランチは小島秀夫にとっても僕にとってもやはり夢の一つという場所であって、それがついに実現したっていう形です。
Performing voiceover for Metal Gear Solid 4 is not merely reciting lines on a page. The stories in the Metal Gear series are deeper and more complicated than many movies or novels. As such, every actor must perform as if their character were a real, nuanced person, in an effort to maintain realism and to ensure an emotional investment from the player.
Use it to shoot the gecko!
I try to keep variety in mind. You don't want all your villains sounding the same. So you try to hone out the individual traits that each of these villains would have. You know, Ocelot is so incredibly flamboyant.
悪役をやらせていただくというのは随分儲け物と言いますか贅沢と言いますか、他の人よりずっと楽しいんじゃないかと思いながらやらせていただくんですけれども。
Whereas Vamp is so stealthily villainous. You try to choose the actors, that match the traits of the character and the drawing and the description.
Snake, as you'll recall, following the Shadow Moses incident 9 years ago, Naomi was detained by the authorities, but someone arranged for her escape.
I had to work with Chris and the producers on kind of developing the voice that they were looking for to match this newer, war-torn, post-apocalyptic cyber ninja Raiden.
You may be the hunter, but you are also the hunted.
小島監督と好きなようにまずさせてくれるんですよ。でそれから、軌道修正ちょっとずれたりした時に直してくれる。そのアドバイスはすごく的確だったので本当にスムーズにできました。
ゲームの監督が全て、録音に立ち会ってこういうビジョンなんだっていうようなことってなかなかその現場に来て言ってくれる人も少なくて、でその中で小島監督というのは僕が迷子にならないようにちゃんと来てくださって、それで、ビジョンはこうです、だからこんな風になりますっていうことを明確に僕に伝えてくれるんで非常に仕事がしやすいですね。
When the MGS4 project started and we started thinking about how we're going to approach voiceover work, we had a pretty good outline of how we're going to approach it, and we had a substantial size script, but we didn't really think it was going to take more than a few months. And so here I sit now just wrapping up the 9th session after 10 months of working on and off with Chris and the team. We haven't sacrificed anything to make a high quality experience.
Before it was all about the graphics and the gameplay. It's now slowly becoming about getting in the right actors and making sure it sounds good.
一言で言ってしまうと、リアルになってしまうんですけど、とにかくたくさんの銃声が鳴るんですけれども。
A big part of the sound design process for the Metal Gear games begins here in the Foley studio, with a seemingly endless variety of items that range from the bizarre and obscure to products you'll find in almost any household. The Foley artist uses these instruments to represent what is seen on screen. Sometimes the most obvious choices work, as seen here, with different footwear representing the diverse footsteps for each character, while other products become sound effects for items that are not so apparent.
This is Snake. Do you read me?
What happens if it's the first time the player hears it?
This is Snake. Do you read me?
Excellent. Quality of the script and the length of the scripts are starting to feel a lot more like feature films. You know, years ago, doing a video game was just short, choppy lines that involved the gameplay. But once these stories started evolving and these wonderful scripts like Metal Gear, you can really get some nice pieces of acting out of the actors.
I think Chris tends to ride these guys a little hard. She wants to make sure that she's getting everything out of these guys. Then again, she's known these guys for years and years.
You can have your panic attack here, 172, in.
Damn it! They got the Mark III! It's all over, Snake!
Good. Not only volume, but you're heartbroken here.
The characters, especially the soldiers, have different emotional states. And so we had to go through this process, Chris and I, of recording hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lines of dialogue that will come up depending on the emotional state of the soldier. And we're recording the same lines, but with these different emotional undertones. So that whole process, and it's very complex because obviously we have to work very closely with the programmers to make sure that that comes out at proper states. So that process has been very tiring, and but I think ultimately rewarding because you're not going to have a static performance every time you play the game.
I feel very fortunate to be doing Metal Gear Solid 4 because it seems to be a culmination of everything that we've been doing with the previous games.
The strings can give it a tragic kind of nature, but you may not want that so much.
今回実はまたそこでも初挑戦なことをしていまして、今回メタルギアシリーズでは初めてアフレコという形を取りました。今までだいたい先に音声を取ってから、モーションキャプチャーしたり映像を作っていったんですけども、それだとやっぱ距離感が合わなかったりするんですよね。怒鳴ってほしいのに怒鳴らないとか、すごく近くにいるのに怒鳴ってるとか、そういうのがたくさんあったこともあって、今回は初めてアフレコに挑戦しました。
Japanese animation has already been set forth and it's already locked in. And we work with motion capture actors that were recorded in Japan. So we have the scenes physically acted out by the motion capture actors. And then we go in and add the US voices to that. So we have to make sure that it matches the raising of a hand, the cock of a head.
Doing it to the Japanese motion control actors and was very, very funny, and at the same time, so effective for performance because, you know, they do little things with their bodies, and every time he moves or he reaches up for something, I can put that into the voice. It's much better for performance. It's very funny to watch the behind the scenes as it's coming together, especially the monkey, who is played by a guy, a regular-sized guy, and he's walking around and doing his monkey thing.
Once the sound effects, the voice acting, and the layers of music are completed and incorporated into the game, they are tuned to perfection, so that the overall experience of Metal Gear Solid 4 is amplified and unforgettable.